What's up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. I'm your host, Mason Kinahan, and in today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders, we are going to be going over Sunday's practice of training camp for the Washington Commanders. I think someone said it was day 9. I know the last episode said day 12. I was way off. I think it's day 9 or day 10, or I don't actually know what day it is, but it is going to be. It was a great one. It was a great one. Jayden Daniels had another incredible day. I'd say he had a better day than he did on Friday when I talked about him having impressive day there then. So great day for Jayden Daniels. Daniels also was announced that he was going to play, or he is going to play in this upcoming Saturday's game against the New York Jets. We'll get into that, and then of course we'll get into the recap with my thoughts on practice and how things went. And then we're going to get into the kicker competition a little bit more with an update there, and then talk, unfortunately, about some camp injuries that occurred during today's practice. So, kicking things off here with Jayden Daniels now being announced Jayden Daniels being announced that he will be playing in the preseason opener against the New York Jets this upcoming Saturday. It is 7 or 6 days away now until we will see the number 2 overall pick, the Heisman winner, Jayden Daniels, in the burgundy and gold on a football field playing in a real NFL game. I'm excited for that. Now, it was announced before practice today that Daniels was going to be playing. It was announced by head coach Dan Quinn. Quinn wasn't really specific on how long Daniels will be playing, if Daniels will be starting, or if he won't be starting, when he's going to play, and all this stuff. So, again, there's still a lot more to go. I think this is a massive week for the Washington Commanders with Jets practice, the joint practice on Thursday before the game. I think that joint practice is really going to determine how much or when Jayden Daniels will be playing in Saturday's game. So I think that I don't expect an announcement on if he's going to be starting the game or not until maybe Friday or after the practice on Thursday. Just to let you know, that's just my thoughts. But again, something could happen. So that was that. And then Jayden, after practice today, in his post-practice presser, he was asked how he feels about being the starter for Saturday's game. And then Daniels was like, "What? The starter?" He was all confused. He didn't fall for the trap because, again, he hasn't been announced the starter yet. He's just been announced that he's going to be playing. So he was very confused. He didn't fall into the trap. Now I'm just assuming the media member just kind of misspoke and said starter instead of just like playing or player or whatever. So I'm just gonna assume that they misspoke and they weren't trying to like lead Daniels into saying something that maybe he shouldn't have said. Because Daniels, he did well. He looked over at the PR person for the Commanders and was like, "Was I announced the starter?" And he was all confused. So, good job from Daniels there, I would say. It was yeah, it was a good job from Daniels. So Jayden Daniels to play against the New York Jets on Saturday. Again, this was very expected. There's really no reason why he shouldn't be playing in Saturday's game against the New York Jets. So we will see the number 2 overall pick against again. I don't know for the Jets who's going to be playing yet. If their starters will be playing, will Sauce Gardner, will DJ Reed, will that secondary, will these pass rushers be playing for the Jets? The starting pass rushers be playing for the Jets? I do not know. So that's just how it is. So Jayden Daniels to play against the New York Jets on Saturday. Now moving on to today's practice. We had a lot going on in today's practice. It was by far, I would say, the longest. Actually, I don't know if by far, but it was the longest practice for the Washington Commanders so far in training camp, or maybe tied for the longest. But they almost went 2 hours. It was like an hour 50, hour 55 minutes of practice today. A lot longer than Friday's practice. A lot longer than some of the other practices over last week. Again, most of these practices have been going from an hour and 15 minutes to an hour 30 minutes. Some of them even shorter, down to about 45, 50 minutes. So this practice by far the longest. Again, they were coming off of an off day or a walkthrough day yesterday on Saturday, and then they will have another walkthrough day tomorrow on Monday. Again, media is not allowed on either of the walkthrough days. So kind of coming off a somewhat off day, they decided to go out there and do a lot of stuff because here was the rundown of today's practice. We had the warm up with the team stretching, and then the team bag drill and everything like that. You had the you had individual stations that each kind of group of players went through. There was 3 different stations. Each one of them focused on ways to tackle better, like as a team. So like tackling was a major focus in today's practice. With these individual stations, I'm going to point out one of the drills that they did. They had a kind of like a tackle dummy, but then the tackle dummy was put on three like a chair with 3 legs, pretty much type thing. So the tackle dummy only like flipped over if you hit it the right way and you kind of picked it up off the ground and you kind of twisted it so that it kind of flipped, if you know what I'm saying. So it was like, yeah. So basically, you had to hit the thing the right way for it to flip over. Um, you had to hit the bag the right way for it to flip over. So some of the players were doing it great. It took the players a second at first, like each station around, to kind of understand how you were supposed to hit it and how you're supposed to hit it the right way. Kind of mimics how you're supposed to hit ball carriers in an NFL game in an actual game. So I like the drill a lot. It was definitely interesting to see like how players attacked the unique bag, and how they like wanted to tackle it and stuff. Some guys that stood out to me that were really good at this drill. Dom Hampton was pretty good at it, and Jeremy Chin as well. It's like the more times they did it, they caught on more. So I just wanted to point that one out because I thought it was a very interesting one, as well. And then they went to kind of punt stuff. So we've kind of seen this before. It was the regular punting unit out there. It was Jahan Dotson, Emmanuel Forbes, Byron Pringle, Olamide Zaccheaus. Who else? I believe Mike Sanders still was out there. I would have to double check, but I believe um, Mike Sanders still, hold on, was out there. I think so. I think he was. I know he was out there. I'll get into a second. But he was out there on some other special team stuff as a return that they did as well. So they did some punt stuff and then they did one-on-one stuff. So basically just wide receiver against DB, running backs, tight ends against linebackers, and O-line against D-line. The only one-on-one or 1v1 stuff that they did on the near field, again, because like there's a near field and a far field from where the media and the fans kind of sit and stand. The only thing they did on the near field was the wide receiver against the DBs, so it was kind of harder to see the far stuff between the O-line and the D-line, and then the running backs and linebackers as well. So in the wide receiver and DBs drills, some guys that stood out to me were Luke McCaffrey. McCaffrey was pretty good in those. Emmanuel Forbes had a lot better of a day than he did on Friday. Forbes had a couple pass breakups throughout those drills. I think he did it like 4 or 5 times. They did it for a while, so he had a couple pass breakups in those. I will say overall though, it kind of favored more towards the receivers. Like the receivers won a lot more than they did on Friday, and I mentioned this on Friday too. How this drill is meant for the receiver to win, not for the cornerback to have to get like a pick six or interception. So it's meant for the receiver to win. They definitely won a lot more today than they did on Friday. So there's that. Then they went to 11 on 11s. The first set of 11 on 11s was kind of lighter for Jayden Daniels. He didn't really pass that much. I believe he had like 2 passes or 3 passes. He had 1 pass and then he kind of like had 2 read options throughout that 11 on 11. Then they went to kickoffs, which I want to talk about this for a little bit because the kickoffs I thought were very interesting just because of how Larry Izzo, the new special teams coordinator, kind of like structured these kickoffs. Because again, with these new kickoff rules, special teams coordinators are kind of trying to figure out what's going to be the trend, what's going to be the best way to attack these new rules and kind of not really exploit them, but kind of exploit them, So some of the things were interesting. I will say the kicks itself, they were kicking from a jugs machine, or like one of the kicking machines. But okay, so returning these kicks were the same guys I mentioned in the punt team, plus Mike Sanders still as well. But the kicks itself were kind of all over the place. You had some deep, high up kicks. You had some kicks towards the pylons and trying to pin them in the corner. You had some kicks kind of like knuckleball style, some line drive kicks. The ones that worked the best, in my opinion, and I really could see this being used throughout the beginning of the preseason and throughout the regular season. Kind of something that these kickers will favor is these knuckleball kicks. If you can kick it like a knuckleball kick or kind of a longer squib kick, and you can get it to hit the ground in the landing area before the returner gets his hands on the ball, and then that hop is kind of like a weird hop, and then the returner kind of like muffs it almost. I think that could really be a very strategic and very useful way to attack these kickoffs. We saw it. We saw it a couple times in in the kickoffs where these knuckleball or squib kick like kickoffs kind of hit the ground in the landing area, and then the returner kind of muffs it, and then it buys the as soon as they touch it, really the kicking team can attack, right? The kicking team can release off of their line of scrimmage type stuff and get to the returner. So it buys them like an extra second or two to kind of pin them back a little bit farther. And it also, with these rules, and where if the kick bounces in the landing area and goes into the end zone, the returning team gets the ball at the 20-yard line. The 20-yard line. So that is massive. That is massive because if one of these returners doesn't want to pick up or return one of these kind of squib kick, knuckleball type kickoffs, it's it's going to be bad because it just goes into the end zone and they get the ball at the 20-yard line. So I really think that could be something that you'll see a lot next week in the first preseason game of the year, or first preseason games of the year for these teams. So that was something that was really interesting to me. Continuing now, we had more 11 on 11 stuff. They did 11 on 11s for like 20 minutes in this period, and then they did some field goals. I'll get into that in a little bit in the kicker competition, how that went, and then some more end of game scenarios like they did on Friday. So now, who kind of stood out throughout, and like what were some of my notes throughout these stuff? I'll start with Jayden Daniels because everyone loves Jayden Daniels. Daniels, according to me, was 12 of 15, 12 of 16, I believe, 12 of 16 with his passing in the 11 on 11. A lot of work today from Jayden Daniels. We saw him throw 2 times the amount of passes that he did on Friday. Friday, he was 5 of 8. Today, he was 12 of 16. A great day for Jayden Daniels. And I say 12 of 16 because, okay, so you look at these 4 incompletions, right? One of these incompletions was a drop to Davion Davis that happened in the first 11 on 11 session early on. It was a great throw by Jayden Daniels. He was kind of pressured. He had to roll out to his right, and then he delivered in between like two defensive backs, or a linebacker and a defensive back, to Davion Davis. It was like a low pass. Davis should have caught it, and he drops it with a lot of velocity on it as well. So it was a great pass by Jane. Wouldn't really count that one. 2 other incompletions were kind of throwaways that where Jane would probably have taken a sack. One of these was a sack by Dorrance Armstrong. Armstrong was just kind of like he had a free release off the edge and was just in Daniel's face almost immediately. And the other one, I did not write down. I did not write down who the other sack was, but he was kind of running around, taking a little bit more time. I will say Daniels took a little bit more time in the pocket today than he usually did before releasing the ball, compared to this Friday and stuff. So again, most of these completions were kind of short checkdowns. A lot to Brian Robinson, a lot to Austin Eckler today. He had a few good like deep throws. One of them to Jahan Dotson. It was like a 35-yard throw to the uh, right side close pylon. It's not like the far pylon for a touchdown, but like the closer pylon at the beginning of the end zone line. Jahan Dotson ran out of bounds at like the 1-yard line. The pass kind of carried him out of bounds, but it was a great throw by Jayden Daniels. So that's kind of the stuff on Jayden Daniels today. Again, very impressive day from Daniels. I've mentioned it before, but his poise in the pocket and just his like he's just being himself out there. You can really tell, and it's working so far. Will again, maybe this continued success it kind of goes towards him seeing the same defense every day for the last 2 3 weeks. We'll have to see if that narrative kind of ends with the New York Jets joint practice later this week. All right, moving now to some of the other standouts. Tyler Owens and Percy Butler, the two safeties. Owens, I've talked about before, the UDFA out of Texas Tech. And Percy Butler, a former fourth round pick, I believe a fourth round pick in the 2022 NFL draft, I want to say. Both of those guys were getting first team reps. Today, again, the defense was kind of in 11 in the 11 on 11 drills. The defense was kind of rotating in and out a lot of guys in the first team. So maybe that kind of attributed to a lot of Jayden Daniels' success as well. Again, we'll just have to wait and see. This Jets joint practice on Thursday is going to be super important. Just seeing how does Daniels attack other things that he doesn't normally see. Um, so I think that will be very important. Tyler Owens was playing a lot in the box today. I kind of mentioned it in the last podcast episode that he was a standout. But again, he's super tall. He's super big safety. Playing in the box a lot more. It's kind of like a safety linebacker hybrid. Just like how Dan Quinn used some of those guys in Dallas to play both safety and linebacker. Some other notes: the offensive line really struggled today, and including the second team offense also struggled under Marcus Mariota until really the end of practice. Mariota and company had a good drive all the way down the field at the end of like in the end of game scenarios. But before that, the second team offense was really struggling. There was a false start, I believe. Hold on. I have who had the false start. It was Julian Good Jones. They had Julian Good Jones in at center as well. And he had Julian Good Jones was at center, and they had a bad snap from him. I did not catch who the false startup was on, but I believe it was on someone on the offensive line. So that's also something to mention. What else? Jayden Daniels. I forgot to mention one more thing with Jayden Daniels. Daniels had his first long touchdown run, you could say today. It was like a 75-yard touchdown run in the end of game scenarios drills where it was kind of like they were running the ball to chew the clock, and Daniels, like on kind of a keeper, just took it to the house. And when I say like he took it to the house, like they weren't it wasn't like they were going to tackle him if they were allowed to tackle him, right? He was just gone. Like he was just gone. There was no one near him. He was just faster than everyone else. Took it 75 yards to the house. Got all the fans in the audience excited and stuff. So it was a super cool play by Jane, and hopefully we see more of that this season. So that was the big play of the day. I would say the best play from Jane Dan. I don't know if I would be say that's the best play from Jayden Daniels because he just kind of just ran down the left sideline and there was no one there. But definitely one of the better plays throughout the last few days. Um, some other things. I'll get into the injuries later. Noah Igbenogany also got some first team reps on defense. Igbenogany kind of struggled. He had a few penalties for holding and DPI during the 1-on-1s and during the 11 on 11s. But he also got some first team reps, so that's also good news for him. And I believe there was one other play I just kind of wanted to mention. Ben Sinnott had like a fairly good day. Sinnott had, I believe, 2 or 3 catches, kind of like screens. There were a lot of tight end screens. I do want to mention that Cliff Kingsbury was using a lot of tight end screens. So get ready for that this season. But there was one play with Marcus Mariota at quarterback. There was just some miscommunication between Mariota and Sinnott, which led to an incompletion where Mariota kind of threw to Sinnott, and Sinnott was kind of looking to block. So maybe there was like a missed call in the huddle, or Sinnott was just not ready. It looked like he was going to be trying to block someone, so he thought maybe it was a run play. But yeah. So the second team offense really struggled until that last drive where Mariota, I believe he hit. I think it was Bryson Tremaine. Tremaine, who was the first one out today, first one out a lot of the days last year as well. First one out today, I believe he hit him in the back of the end zone, his back left of the end zone. Could have been a different receiver, but I believe it was Bryson Tremaine. So those were kind of the notes on today's practice. Moving on now to the kicker competition. Some more notes now. The kicker competition I mentioned on Friday. Both players, Ramiz Ahmed and Riley Patterson, went 4 or 5. Both of them missed from 47. I want to say. I want to say it was from 47. Both of them missed from uh, on uh, on uh, Friday, I believe. Yep, Friday. And then today, both of them went 4 for 5 again, and they both missed from 42 this time. So, I mean, you can look. I mean, it's not looking wonderful. The Commanders' kicking situation is not sunshine and rainbows right now. It is not good. I would not be surprised again if the kicker for Week 1 is still not on the roster. So that is just something to note. So it was yeah, it was yeah, so it wasn't great. They both missed from 42. I believe for both of them it was wide right. So they both go for 4 for 5 again, and neither of them technically still don't really have the edge over the other. I will say Ramiz Ahmed's kicks from short range definitely had some height to them, more height than they did in previous kicks. I don't know if he meant, I mean, he probably meant to have more height on them, but the longer kicks starting at like the 42, like from 42 yards, 47 yards, and then 52 yards. All those kicks were still line drives. He knocked down the 47 and then he barely got the 52 yarder. But the 42 yarder he missed wide right. So that's kind of the status on the kicker competition. Still not wonderful. Still not wonderful. Moving on now finally to unfortunately we had a few camp injuries today. Let me pull up everyone that got hurt because there are a few people. All right, so um, Alex Akambulu, the tackle for the Commanders, he was on the practice squad and kind of rotated between the practice squad and the main roster last year. Carted off with a, let me get the injury. Carted off. They didn't say what injury it was, but he was carted off. Sam Cosme, I know, yes, Sam Cosme, he wasn't at practice today. I don't know if we got kind of a clarification on why he wasn't at practice today, but I don't think much of it. Um, Andrew Wiley was out there not participating in team drills. And then yeah, so that kind of left Mason Brooks, Jayden Daniels to kind of get some like second team reps and potentially some first team reps. And you could really tell today that the defensive line was eating up the offensive line, and that might play a role into Jayden Daniels and the 2 sacks he took because for some of the plays he just had no time. So yeah. And then Davion Davis as well was injured on one of the kickoff drills. I saw him. He looks fine though afterwards. He was back out there later on in the 11-on-11 drills. So he looks fine there. But some things to note was the yeah, the injury for the injury for Alex Akambulu, and then um the status of Sam Cosme. I'll try and figure out why he wasn't there. But yeah. Yeah, I don't yeah, he wasn't there. Hopefully maybe it's because he's trying to get paid. Like he's signing the contract or something, but he wasn't there. We'll have to wait and see if he's there on Monday or on Tuesday as well. But that will do it for really today's episode of Keeping Up with Commanders. Um, yeah, that was it for today's practice. Really, it was probably definitely one of the longest practices of training camp so far. If you want to see every throw and what happened with every throw that Jayden Daniels made today, I'll be posting it on my Twitter at Mason_Kenahan. You can follow me there. I'm posting live updates from training camp when I have good internet there. So that yeah, when I have good internet, I'm trying to post live updates, and then I'll be posting stuff about the preseason game coming up, and then if the Jets Commanders joint practice is streamed, I'll be posting about that as well. That'll do it for today's episode of Keeping Up with the Commanders. See you guys in the next one. Peace.